Hey, we all need some alone time, right? A little bit of peaceful solitude can be amazing but being alone becomes something completely different when it creeps up on you, or worse, is forced upon you. When that happens, the effects on our minds and bodies can be surprisingly extensive. And while everyone reacts differently, the symptoms tend to get more severe and persistent the longer the isolation lasts. Imagine being involuntarily confined to a single space indefinitely for days, weeks, months, or even years with no one to talk to and nothing productive to do. Your body will likely go through a whole bunch of changes. Let's explore what can happen and why. Early on, your stress hormones might spike. As time passes, this can turn into chronic stress. See, social interactions and meaningful activities are absolutely essential for our emotional stability. Researchers call this social reality testing. It is like having a sounding board to check if our perceptions are rational. So, when you're deprived of that, your sense of identity and reality starts to feel threatened. Your thoughts can spiral, your impulses might take over, and this can set the stage for depression, obsessions, suicidal thoughts, and for some, even delusions and hallucinations. Over time, this prolonged agitation can make the brain's limbic system, which regulates fear and stress, become hyperactive and overly responsive. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for reasoning and moral judgment, can actually shrink. This impairs your focus, memory, and overall cognition. Essentially, the balance shifts from rational thinking to raw emotionality. As someone stays in this state, that imbalance becomes ingrained, making them more prone to anxiety, rage, and irrational actions. But it doesn't stop with the brain. Isolation messes with other parts of your health too. You might lose your sense of time and find it hard to sleep. You're more likely to experience heart palpitations, headaches, dizziness, and hypersensitivity. You might even lose weight because of stress-induced digestive issues and a poor appetite. Of course, a person can try to cope by creating the healthiest routine possible under such extreme circumstances like exercising, reading, and writing, but that can only do so much. In fact, the United Nations, many human rights organizations, and experts classify this kind of forced, prolonged isolation as a form of torture, and yet, it's something thousands of people in prisons endure every day. This practice, often called solitary confinement or restrictive housing, is most common in the United States. In 2019, over 120,000 U.S. prisoners were living in solitary, spending 22 to 24 hours a day in mostly windowless cells, roughly the size of a parking spot. Interestingly, solitary confinement was introduced to U.S. prisons by Quaker groups in the late 1700s. They saw it as an alternative to physical punishment, believing it would lead to reflection and penitence, which is where the word penitentiary comes from. But the practice quickly drew criticism from public figures and even the Supreme Court. Charles Dickens famously condemned it as worse than any torture of the body. Its use declined. But then in the 1980s, with a rise in tough-on-crime laws, U.S. prison populations skyrocketed. As prisons became more crowded, protests and violence increased, and authorities started using solitary confinement more and more to maintain control. Shockingly, many people have been put in solitary for minor, non-violent, rule-breaking, like talking back to a guard. And while solitary confinement is harmful to anyone, many who experience it already have mental health disorders, which the isolation only makes worse. The damage seems to be long-lasting, making it incredibly difficult to readjust to life outside of a cell. People who have been through solitary are 3 times more likely to show signs of post-traumatic stress disorder. They often report changes in their personality, increased anxiety and paranoia in normal situations, and trouble concentrating and connecting with others. Some states have started restricting the use of solitary confinement for people with serious mental illness, children, or pregnant individuals, and some have set 15 or 20-day limits for everyone. But these laws aren't always enforced, and prison authorities sometimes find loopholes. The bottom line is, solitary confinement does immense damage, works against rehabilitation, and doesn't even reduce prison violence. Meanwhile, other countries have focused on more humane approaches. Norway, for example, imprisons far fewer people per capita than the U.S., and spends about 5 times more per prisoner on better accommodations, classes, and work release programs. As a result, Norway has one of the world's lowest rates of people returning to prison after release. It's a powerful indicator that, as humans, we tend to get better together. Thanks for watching. If you found this interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content.